Today, we're going to be breaking down my own personal throwing mechanics. So, we're going to be talking about some of the things that I've worked to improve a lot on from the time when I was a player in terms of my throwing mechanics. And then we're going to talk about some of the things that I still struggle with because of bad habits back when I was a quarterback and was a player. So, I think the most important thing that this is something that I wish. Let's start with this. As a player, I was always a very coachable athlete, right? And a lot of you guys probably listening to this are very coachable athletes, and you have a coach who tells you to do something, you want to buy in, you want to be a coachable player, and you do what he says. And I was always that type of athlete, but the problem was the people delivering the coaching to me, whether it's my quarterback coach, coaches at school, weren't always giving me the best mechanical advice. So I struggled with a ton of bad habits as a player. Like when I would throw the ball, my arm would almost see how I have a decently long release right here? See how my arm isn't at a 90-degree angle? I used to be almost fully extended with my arm. My front foot would be almost way out here. I would start out in a base where my feet were way outside my shoulders. I had probably every single bad habit in the book because that's what coaches would tell me. And obviously over time, the position evolves and there are certain things that you try to focus on and certain things that I focus on with my quarterbacks and I try to do myself. I never try to make an athlete do something or teach an athlete something without trying to ultimately incorporate it myself, whether that's just me working out and throwing to a net, throwing during a video, or whatever the case may be, right? So those were some of the problems that I had. And you're going to see some of those problems still consistently pop up, even when we're breaking down my motion right now. But I would say one of the most important things that I have learned, studying quarterbacks, working with quarterbacks, is the importance of weight distribution, right? Being able to get your weight back onto your back leg and being able to maintain weight on your back leg so you could get to a concept called upper body and lower body dissociation. That essentially means when this front foot is down, your shoulders are going back, and then your hips rotate through, aka you transfer your weight from your back leg to your front leg to bring the ball through. It's very, very similar to a baseball swing. I played baseball a lot as a younger athlete, probably until the time I was 12, 13 years old, and I always could hit the hell out of a baseball, but nobody ever told me that swinging a baseball bat was a lot like throwing a football. So that's what I try to get across to guys. It's a very, very similar sequence. So when you go to throw, the position that you want to try to shoot for is called being stacked, right? So what I mean by that is that your head, your knee, and your foot are literally stacked on top of each other. Now I'll show myself throwing real quick, full speed, and then we'll play it again full speed. We have two clips of myself throwing, one off of a drop, and then this one right here. But see how my motion, it's not necessarily slow, but it is a little bit long in terms of the backstroke. If you do have a longer backstroke, if you have proper hip rotation, a good quick front stride, you're transferring your weight well, what that can increase is something called arm speed. So you having a quote-unquote longer arm path or maybe a longer quote-unquote release doesn't necessarily matter if the arm speed is there. That's why with quarterbacks, I don't tend to focus a whole lot on this area of their throw. I'm a firm believer that everybody throws the ball differently. Everybody's got a different body type. I'm a firm believer that we want to try to clean up something called our mechanical sequence, which makes me tie it back into that ultimate baseball swing. So remember I said you want to get to a stacked position. That's actually a baseball term. You want to keep your head, your knee, and your foot stacked on top of each other. And that means that your weight is going to be back, probably about 65 to 70% of your weight loaded onto your back leg. Now, that doesn't mean that you load up with your front shoulder and have it super loaded. You're nice and relaxed with the ball, but that's where you ultimately want to be. Very light on your front foot because you ultimately want to take that weight and you want to transfer it to your front leg. The more weight that you have back, the more weight that you could transfer through. But you want to have that transfer of weight at the right time. And that needs to happen after the foot strike. So you see how when I get my front foot down, and this was something that I was always taught wrong as a player, I was taught that you want to push off of your back foot to create the front stride. You want to push off of this middle arch of your back foot, and that will get your front foot down. And that's why coaches would always tell you to start out with a super wide base, push as hard as you can, and your foot's going to get down. When that's actually not the case, you guys. You want to keep your weight loaded on your back leg. You want to step with the front foot. It's a separate event. And when that front foot touches the ground, you want to maintain that stacked position because what that allows you to do is that allows you to rotate your shoulders back. A lot of quarterbacks, when they go off this back foot and they push and then their front foot gets down and all of their body weight shifts forward and it's almost like your head is stacked with your front knee and your front foot when your foot gets down, your foot gets trailed behind yourself and you can't dissociate your upper half. Because I was able to maintain weight on my back leg, that allows me to rotate my shoulders and take the football back. Now my upper body is separate from my lower body. Very, very similar to what is it? A baseball swing. You step to the pitcher, the football kind of serves as the bat right here, and then what do? You squish the back bug, the hips fire through, the ball comes through, and that creates a concept called torque, right? So this is something that I've worked a lot on. as just like a quarterback personally is this type of mechanical sequence, because this is something that I was never taught as a player, and I wish I was, because this allows me to get more hip rotation. This allows me to get more power on the ball and take pressure off my arm, because you see how I'm able to get to this position right here where my hip and my knee are coming through before the ball. They call that a C curve right here. See how it forms the letter C? That takes pressure off your arm. That's you properly using your hips, but your hips can't fire through before the elbow and before the ball if your weight rushes forward on the front foot strike. You got to think of it like a baseball swing, guys. You step to the receiver, but you maintain your weight so you could separate that upper body and have those hips whip the upper half through. That is called torque. Now, there's something that I've struggled with as a quarterback, and that has to do with my front elbow discipline. And you guys probably see that when I throw the ball, I have generally a very, very high release. I was always coached to have a high release. Nowadays, you see guys with a lower release point, that kind of like sidearm arm slot. So what causes me to have this release point? And this is still something I struggle with to this day. Whenever I miss a pass, whenever I throw a bad pass, it always misses high or it always misses low. And this has to do with a wild elbow. And we're going to take a look at that in this second example here of me throwing off of a drop. Now, before we get into that though, fellas, if you were a quarterback or a wide receiver and you would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we're going to be traveling out to 15 different cities across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. So guys, if you're local to any one of these cities on the screen here, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you out to one of our off-season training camps. All of our camps, guys, will sell out within the next 2 to 3 months. Today, we officially released the schedule to everybody on all of our social medias. We've only been promoting this on YouTube for the last month, so kind of giving you guys a chance to get exclusive access to it, but all these spots will go. We're going to be going out to San Francisco, California, Orlando, Florida, Phoenix, Charlotte, Austin, Las Vegas, Seattle, Chicago, Newark, Birmingham, Houston, Boston, Columbus, Boise, and Los Angeles. So guys, if you're local to one of those cities, we would love to have you out to one of our camps. So check out, again, that very first link in the description below. Again, very first link in that description below. Let's get back to this video. So like I said, I tend to have a wild front elbow when I throw. So I was taught as a quarterback, or at least as a player, when you throw, that your front elbow is going to be a source of your power. I was literally taught this, you guys, to take this front elbow and try to pull it down to my front hip, because that yank and that pull is going to give me a source of power. And that will give you a source of power. But the problem is that it's not going to be a consistent source of power, because when you throw, you probably don't want to have this like overly high release point. You probably want to keep your release somewhere like maybe just slightly above your head. You definitely don't want your elbow even with your forehead like how I have. You want the elbow to be down a little bit, right? You would like your elbow to be probably even with your shoulder. But again, I have this really high release. Muscle memory is a hell of a thing, you guys. When you rep out something over and over and over and over again, and you don't have a coach correcting you on it, it's very, very tough, guys, to fix that bad habit. So that's why I'm always harping on young quarterbacks. It takes reps. It takes 1,000 reps to break a bad habit. It takes 10,000 reps to master a habit. So something I could recommend to players is you see how I go back with the ball? Like, again, I keep my weight back. I have my front foot striking the ground while my weight is back. And now what I have to do is I got to transfer my weight. But you see how my elbow, see how it kind of like goes here and then it goes up and swings down. I still keep that hand up by my face. But if I was coaching myself, what I would tell myself to do is that when you go back with the ball, try not to have your hand go down. Just go straight back with it and leave this hand. Just try to be as sturdy as you can with that hand at this point. Leave that hand almost at your throwing side shoulder and just let your hips be the thing that rotates you through. And that will help you keep your release at actually a lower spot. But because that elbow swings same time as my hips are swinging through, that's what makes my release high. Now, you get very good at a bad habit. And again, everybody throws differently. You look at a guy like Marcus Mariota, he throws the ball differently than Baker Mayfield. You know what I mean? Baker Mayfield throws the ball differently than Tom Brady. Not everybody has a perfect mechanical sequence, but we can always strive to try to get close. So that's what I would tell you guys, is to focus on that weight distribution like we discussed in the first clip, and try to avoid any type of little habits like this. There are always areas of your throwing motion that you could get better on to maybe help with efficiency. I guarantee you, if I worked more on that, like, obviously I don't have to because I'm a coach, guys. Like, I'm not a player. I'm not trying to play for any team. I try to coach people, and I want to try to get my mechanical sequence as best as I can, but I don't have the time to sit there and work on my mechanics. You know what I mean? But if I was a player, or if I was coaching myself, that is something I would tell myself to work on, because you can always get better at certain aspects of your game, certain elements of your game to make you more efficient. And I guarantee you, I probably wouldn't miss as often high as I do currently. But hope this is able to help you guys. This is a video that was done by request. So if you guys have any more video requests, stuff you'd like to see from me, I'd be happy to show it to you, but I appreciate you guys watching this.